The spring sun hung low over the rolling plains of Wyoming Territory in 1886. Long shadows stretched across the prairie as a tired wagon creaked along a dusty road toward the small ranching town of Willow Creek. Sarah Bennett sat on the driver's bench, holding the reins with steady hands despite her exhaustion. Beside her lay a worn blanket covering the family's few belongings. Behind her sat her 4 sons. 12-year-old Jacob watched the road with quiet determination. 10-year-old Samuel could never stop asking questions. 8-year-old Luke smiled at every bird and rabbit they passed. Little Noah, only 5, clutched a wooden horse carved by his late father. Sarah's husband had died the previous winter after a fever swept through their small farm. Since then, creditors had taken nearly everything. All she had left were her boys and the courage to keep moving. "We'll find work," she whispered more to herself than anyone else. Jacob nodded. "We always do." As they entered Willow Creek, townsfolk glanced curiously
Welcome,
at the
ma'am.
dusty wagon.
Thank you for having
Some
us.
smiled kindly. Others simply counted the boys. Sarah noticed every look. At the general store she asked quietly, "Does anyone know of a ranch needing workers?" The shopkeeper scratched his beard. "Try Ethan Walker's place. Biggest ranch outside town." "But..." He hesitated. "What is it?" Sarah asked. "He's known for hiring hard-working folks." "Doesn't say much." Sarah thanked him. An hour later they reached a wide ranch surrounded by sturdy wooden fences and green pastures. Horses grazed peacefully while cattle wandered beyond the creek. A tall rancher repaired a broken fence alone. His shirt sleeves were rolled up. His hat shaded calm gray eyes. He noticed the wagon and set down his hammer. "Afternoon," he said politely. Sarah
Welcome,
climbed
ma'am.
down.
We've been
"My
expecting
name
you.
is Sarah Bennett. Ethan Walker." She swallowed her pride. "I came looking for work." Ethan listened without interrupting. "I can cook, sew, clean, milk cows, tend chickens, whatever honest work you have." He nodded thoughtfully. Then his eyes drifted toward the wagon. The 4 boys stared back silently. Sarah lowered her eyes. "I should tell you something before you decide." Ethan waited. "I won't leave my 4 boys." The words came softly, but with complete certainty. "They stay with me." She expected the same answer she had heard in 3 different towns. Too many mouths. Too much trouble. Too expensive. Instead, Ethan looked at each boy before meeting her eyes again. "I wouldn't ask you to." Sarah blinked. For a moment she wondered if she had heard him correctly. A gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh hay across the ranch as the boys exchanged hopeful glances. Something unexpected had just begun.
Line
The
it up,
following
son.
morning,
Just like
sunlight
that.
spilled across
Got
Walker
it, Mr.
Ranch
Harris.
as roosters
Together now.
crowed from the
Giddy
barnyard.
up, Blaze.
Sarah woke
That's a
before
good
dawn
boy.
inside the small guest cabin Ethan had offered them. It wasn't fancy. The roof creaked. The floorboards squeaked. But after months of uncertainty, it felt like home. She quietly prepared breakfast while the boys pulled on their boots. Jacob helped carry water. Samuel eagerly searched for chores. Luke laughed as chickens followed him around the yard. Little Noah refused to let go of his wooden horse until Ethan smiled and said, "Your horse can watch while you help feed mine." The boy grinned. After breakfast Ethan gathered everyone outside. "I don't believe in charity," he said calmly. "I believe in honest work." Sarah nodded. "So do we." He handed Jacob a pair of work gloves. "Think you can help mend fences?" Jacob's face lit up. "Yes, sir." Samuel was sent to gather eggs. Luke helped brush the horses, though one curious mare kept nudging his hat onto the ground. Even Ethan laughed. Noah proudly carried tiny buckets of grain, spilling almost half of them before reaching the chickens. "No rush," Ethan said kindly. "We've all started somewhere." Sarah spent the morning baking fresh bread, washing clothes, and preparing lunch for the ranch hands. She worked quietly, yet every task reflected care and gratitude. By noon, the aroma of warm biscuits drifted from the kitchen.
I think that'll do it.
The ranch hands exchanged surprised
Good work,
looks.
son.
Best meal we've had in
Mommy,
years,
the chickens
one of them
are
whispered.
hungry.
Ethan simply smiled. That afternoon dark clouds rolled across the distant hills. Together, everyone hurried to bring the cattle closer before the rain arrived. Sarah watched Ethan patiently teach Jacob how to secure a loose gate. Instead of barking orders, he explained each step. Jacob listened carefully. Later, Samuel proudly carried a basket overflowing with eggs. "We didn't break a single one," he shouted. "You earned every one of them," Ethan replied. As evening settled over the prairie, everyone gathered around a campfire outside the bunkhouse. The boys laughed while roasting potatoes in the glowing coals. Sarah couldn't remember the last time she had heard them laugh so freely. She looked toward Ethan, who quietly repaired a saddle under the fading light. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He simply treated them with respect. For the first time since her husband's death, the heavy weight in Sarah's heart felt just a little lighter. But neither of them knew that the approaching storm would soon test everything they were beginning to build. The rain came during the night, leaving the ranch wrapped in the fresh scent of wet earth.
And how was your day,
By
little man?
sunrise, the prairie
was
sparkled
good.
beneath golden light, and every blade of grass seemed alive. Life at Walker Ranch settled into a steady rhythm. Each morning, Sarah baked bread while the boys hurried outside to help with chores. Jacob worked beside Ethan repairing fences. Samuel learned to milk cows without spilling the bucket. Luke spent hours brushing horses, talking to them as if they understood every word. Little Noah followed everyone with his wooden horse tucked under one arm, determined to be useful. One evening, Ethan found Noah sitting alone on the fence. "Missing someone?" he asked gently. Noah nodded. "My pa." Ethan sat beside him without speaking for a moment. "I miss my parents too," he finally said. "Some people never really leave us. We carry the good they gave us." Noah smiled faintly and leaned against him. From the kitchen window, Sarah watched the quiet moment. Tears filled her eyes. No one had ever tried so patiently to understand her boys. Later that evening, Sarah carried fresh coffee onto the porch where Ethan was repairing an old saddle. "You've been kind to us," she said softly.
Thank you,
"I've
my
only
dear.
treated you the way folks ought
You're
to treat each
welcome.
other." She looked
It's
toward
good
the
to
sunset.
have you here.
"After my husband died, every door seemed to close. People looked at my boys and saw nothing but extra mouths to feed." Ethan remained silent, letting her speak. "I almost stopped believing there were good people left." He smiled gently. "My father taught me something. A ranch isn't measured by how much land a man owns. What is it measured by? The people who call it home." Sarah looked at him with surprise. No expensive gift could have meant more than those simple words. For the first time in many years, neither of them felt quite so lonely. As stars appeared across the wide Wyoming sky, something warm and hopeful quietly settled between them. Neither dared to name it yet. 3 days later, the peaceful skies disappeared.
Help, please!
Dark clouds rolled
Easy,
over the
boy.
mountains,
Back,
carrying
back.
fierce winds across the open prairie. Ranch hands hurried to secure wagons while cattle became restless. "We've got to move the herd before the creek floods," Ethan called. Everyone rushed into action. Jacob saddled horses beside the ranch hands. Samuel gathered supplies. Luke helped close barn doors. Sarah kept Noah safely inside while preparing blankets and hot coffee. Rain poured so heavily that the fields disappeared behind gray curtains. As Ethan and Jacob rode toward the far pasture, a frightened calf became trapped near the swollen creek. "I'm going after it," Jacob shouted. "Wait!" Ethan called. But the frightened boy was already riding forward. The muddy ground gave way beneath his horse. Jacob slipped from the saddle and slid toward the rushing water. "Jacob!" Sarah screamed from the hill. Without hesitation, Ethan urged his horse forward. The powerful animal fought through deep mud as Ethan reached the terrified boy just before the current swept him away. "Grab my hand." Jacob stretched with all his strength. Their hands met. With one powerful pull, Ethan lifted him onto the horse. The ranch hands quickly rescued the frightened calf as everyone hurried back toward higher ground.
I gotcha! Don't let
By
go!
evening, the storm finally passed.
Thank you, thank you!
Inside the barn, Sarah wrapped Jacob in a warm blanket while tears streamed down her face. "You saved my son." Ethan shook his head. "I protected family." The words filled the quiet room. Family. Sarah looked at him, speechless. Nearby, the four boys smiled at one another. Even little Noah understood those words. That night, as rain dripped softly from the barn roof, Sarah realized her heart was no longer afraid of hoping again. Outside, the clouds slowly parted, revealing a sky filled with bright stars. The storm had tested the ranch, but it had also revealed something stronger than fear. It had revealed love beginning to take root. The storm left the ranch muddy, but the bright spring sunshine soon returned.
We'll get through this.
Fences
Together.
needed rebuilding, the barn roof needed patching, and frightened cattle had to be gathered. No one complained. Everyone simply worked together. Day by day, Walker Ranch grew stronger. One afternoon, Sarah stood beside the clothesline, hanging freshly washed shirts that danced in the warm breeze. Ethan approached, carrying a basket of apples from the orchard near the creek. "You've done more for this ranch than you know," he said. Sarah smiled softly. "We only wanted a chance. You've given this place life again." She looked toward the pasture, where her four boys laughed as they chased a runaway calf. Their cheerful voices echoed across the hills. "I worried they would always be seen as a burden," she admitted. "I've never seen them that way," Ethan replied. "Jacob works like a grown man. Samuel notices everything. Luke makes everyone smile. And little Noah reminds us to slow down and enjoy the day." Sarah laughed through happy tears. "You know them better than most people ever tried to." Ethan removed his hat, holding it in his hands. "I know this may be sooner than expected, but I need you to hear something." She waited quietly. "When you first drove through my gate, I thought I was hiring workers." He paused. "Instead, I found the family I'd been praying for." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I don't have much to offer," she whispered. "You have kindness, courage, and four remarkable boys. That's more valuable than anything money can buy." Just then, the boys came running toward them. Samuel grinned. "Ma. Mr. Walker let me ride Duke all by myself." Luke proudly held up a tiny bird's nest he had found after making sure it was empty. Jacob simply smiled, but his eyes said everything. Little Noah slipped his hand into Ethan's. Without thinking, Ethan squeezed it gently. Sarah saw the quiet moment and understood something important. Her boys already trusted him. And so did she. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, the future no longer seemed frightening. It finally felt like home.
With this
Summer
ring,
arrived,
I promise you
covering the
everything.
prairie with golden grass and wildflowers.
We love
Walker
you, son.
Ranch had
we
never
love
looked
you
more
so
beautiful.
much.
The fences stood strong. The cattle were healthy. The horses grazed peacefully beneath wide blue skies. Inside the ranch house, the smell of fresh bread and apple pie filled the kitchen. Sarah hummed while preparing supper as the boys finished their evening chores. Outside, Ethan leaned against the old fence, watching them with a grateful smile. His once quiet ranch was now filled with laughter. It was exactly what he had been missing. That Sunday, after the church service in Willow Creek, Ethan asked Sarah to walk with him beside the nearby river. The water flowed gently between smooth stones while cottonwood trees whispered in the breeze. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ethan stopped. "I've spent years building this ranch," he said. "But a ranch is only land until it has people to love." Sarah looked into his calm gray eyes. "You've already given my boys more than a place to sleep," she said. "You've given them hope." Ethan reached into his pocket and held out a simple silver ring. "Sarah Bennett." His voice was steady. "Will you marry me? Not because you need rescuing, and not because I need help."
With this ring.
He smiled warmly.
Oh,
"But because I cannot
love
imagine
you.
this ranch, or my life, without
We're a
you and your
family.
boys." Tears rolled gently down Sarah's cheeks. She nodded. "Yes." Before Ethan could say another word, four excited voices echoed across the riverbank. "We knew she'd say yes." The boys came running. Jacob shook Ethan's hand like a man. Samuel laughed so hard he nearly fell into the grass. Luke wrapped his arms around both of them. Little Noah looked up with a hopeful smile. "So, can I call you Pa?" Ethan knelt and hugged him tightly. "I'd be honored." That evening, neighbors gathered at Walker Ranch for a joyful celebration. Lanterns glowed from the porch. Music drifted through the warm summer air as families shared food, laughter, and stories beneath the stars. Sarah watched her sons laughing beside Ethan, their faces bright with happiness. Months earlier, she had arrived believing no one would ever welcome a widow with 4 boys. Instead, she had found a man who saw not a burden, but a blessing. As the sun disappeared beyond the endless prairie, Ethan gently took Sarah's hand. Together they watched their sons race across the golden fields, their laughter carried by the evening breeze. And in that peaceful corner of the Wild West, 5 lonely hearts had become one loving family, proving that the greatest homes are not built from timber or stone, but from kindness, faith, and the courage to open a waiting heart.